Welcome to Step by Step Gardening with me, David Domoney, at the very beautiful Bridgemere Show Gardens.
Keep watching for tips on smarter watering for your plants, how to keep your irises blooming, and a gorgeous Alpine container.
Now, our plant of the month is a big summer flowering favourite, almost a kaleidoscope of flower colour, the beautiful hydrangea. And it's an all year round plant. Summer flowers, lovely foliage, you get autumn colour, the dried flowers you can use for Christmas decorations. And then in spring, along the stems, it's one of the first shrubs to come into leaf. Lots of little green flames coming up around the outside of the branches. You get a lot of bang for your buck with the hydrangeas. Now just take a look at the flowers. Huge, blousy, almost globes about the size of a grapefruit. In the centre you see a little tiny dot. That's actually the flower. Around the outside, these aren't petals, these are sepals that protect the flower within. And these sepals around the outside have gained colour to attract pollinators in. And that's why they dry so easily during the winter months as dried flowers on the plant, rather than, if they were petals, just falling off. And in that, there's the beauty that gives it colour during the winter. Now, interesting, in Cornwall and Devon, you'll see an awful lot of blue hydrangeas out and about. Now, these are Hydrangea macrophylla. These particular varieties can change the colour of their flower depending on the acidity of the soil. Below 7 pH, they're blue, but on the South Downs and the chalky areas that are very alkaline, they're pink. So the hydrangea mophead can change its colour dependent on the type of soil.
Most hydrangeas originate from China. They've been popular over here for over 200 years, since the plant hunters first brought them over. And they do very well in the British climate.
Now, there are a lot of plant breeders that are looking at hydrangeas, and new varieties are coming in all the time. This particular one has been bred to hold its colour rather than change colour. This one's known as Deep Purple Dance. And take a little close look right in the centre there, and the little flower head, the pinprick in the middle, is a beautiful azure blue there with this marvellous burgundy outer parts. It's gorgeous. Now, these are Lacecap hydrangeas, and rather than the globe, they're almost like side plates or saucer shapes, flat. Lovely florets coming around the outside, opening first, and then finally varieties opening in the middle. And look at the colours here. Look at these ones here. Green opening out to pink around the outside. That is gorgeous, almost glowing in its colour. And here, apple blossom.
Hydrangeas like drained but moist soil and partial shade. Some morning sunlight with afternoon shade is where they perform best. The exact best conditions can depend on the species and variety.
Take a look at this one here, Hydrangea paniculata, almost cone-like in the shape of its flowers, and again the little sepals just opening up around the outside. This is a slightly later flowering variety and, funnily enough, more tolerant to drier conditions.
A classic larger species is Hydrangea arborescens, which tends to have very large rounded flower heads that are usually white or a tinge of green.
And down here we have a trailing variety, and if you've got a wall you can plant it on the top of the wall to cascade down. It doesn't end there. There's also climbing hydrangeas too. This variety is petiolaris, lovely lace cap, all fine and beautiful with the little florets just on the outer side, these sepals here. Now, it's got little roots, so it roots into the wall and climbs that way. Suitable for a north location, so if you're looking for a climber in a darker area, Hydrangea petiolaris really does the business. So many different types, massive amount of colour and different habits as well. Plant of the month, I give you Hydrangea. A great job to do at this time of year to get lots more free plants is to lift up your irises and divide them.
There are different types of iris. These are bearded iris, Iris germanica. They have large blousy blooms in a range of colours that can flower from April to June depending on the variety.
Now, the first thing you notice when you see irises, you've got this lovely sword-like foliage coming out in a fan, and then you've got these knobbly bits at the bottom. These are rhizomes, and they're on the surface of the soil because they like to warm up from the sun, and that helps generate the activity of the plant to perform really well with flowering. Now, the issue is once that's finished, it produces other rhizomes, and then it starts to spread out. And then eventually you end up with a bit of a bulb patch where the foliage is on the outside and the knobbly clumps of the rhizomes are in the middle. It's not only that, if it gets too congested, it also inhibits some of the flowering. They don't quite perform as well. So after about 3 to 4 years, maybe even 5, that's a really good time to start declumping. And the best time to do the splitting is about 6 weeks after it's finished flowering. So now is a really good time.
These irises aren't too bad, but they're perfect for me to demonstrate with. Lift them up by digging around the plant a few inches, both outside and under the roots, and then gently lift out the entire clump.
Here we are, a rhizome clump. And to split them up, it's a lot easier than you think. Now, I'm not going to use any tools because I don't want to damage the rhizome itself. I'm going to use my hands and then literally pull it apart like that. Oh look, there's 2 there. There's this one here. I could in fact probably cut it in half again and have 2, but for the sake of this, I'm going to leave it as one plant to get on the grow quite early. And then I've got another one perfect just here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is reduce the foliage down a little bit. Because the roots have been out of the ground, they've not fully anchored in. Sometimes with this big foliage here, the wind blows it and can rock it in position. But if I take some of the foliage down, what that'll do is make it a little bit more stable in its position. So I'm reducing it down by about half, just to make sure there's enough foliage for the plant to photosynthesize and obviously produce energy for it to grow, but not tall enough to make it unstable. I'll just take away any of the old leaves that have died back as well, taking the opportunity just to give it a clean up. There we are, a brand new plant to put in. Let's get it in the ground. Now, the secret with planting is to always remember that this rhizome must be on the surface of the soil, not underneath the soil, because it needs the sun to warm it. A lot of the questions I get are from people saying, my iris aren't flowering pretty well. And I ask them, lift them up, lift them up. Let that sun kiss its back. And you plant them the distance between 25 and 30 centimetres from the next iris, and just firm it well in. Make sure the rhizome's all clear and it's ready to grow.
Many garden centres have areas dedicated to alpines, a mix of brightly coloured flowers and succulent plants. They're great in a rockery or a pot, and with the summer holidays here, they're great fun to plant up with the kids too.
Now, these are all little alpines. They're not all from the Alps, but they are from rocky regions or also mountainous areas. Usually quite a small root system because they're used to growing in stones and outcrops and the like, usually baking sun on top of them as well. The best container for alpines It's a shallow container. They haven't got deep root systems. You don't want a big pot that can hold a lot of moisture because they don't like that. And these shallow ones fit the bill perfectly. Inside, I put a mixture, a combination of 50% peat-free compost and 50% horticultural grit. And horticultural grit is just many small stones, but it's also got a bit of sand in it as well. And this combination aids drainage, which helps the plants not sit in too much water. You can also add a few features as well. Stones or rocks, something that gives it a little bit of character, feeling as if it's mountainous, or broken bits of pots. This is from an old strawberry pot. I'm going to nestle this into the corner here just to give a bit of structure and interest. Now it's onto the plants. The first one is a little Erodium here. Take a close look at the flower. Beautiful vein markings in. The thing about Alpines, it's all about the detail. Beautiful foliage underneath. In fact, I'm going to pop this plant through the hole that you can see there just at the back. Tease the head through. I'm poking it in the back here. Take your time. Enjoy it. It is a sensory moment. Oh, that's lovely. There we go. And a little bit of compost just at the back to fill in. Good thing about the little Erodium, it flowers for quite a long period of time. Spring right the way through into late summer. In the front, I'm going to plant Saponaria. It's another carpeting plant. Now it gets its name from the Latin sapo, or even the Italian sapone, meaning soap. Both the leaves and the roots themselves, when immersed in water, contains soap qualities. And I'm positioning it here for these beautiful pink flowers, again from spring through into summer, but this plant is going to cascade down the front. Now the next plant I'm putting in is a must as an Alpine. It's a Sedum. Stonecrop is its other name. And if you take a look at the detail of the leaves, little tiny thick lobes of leaves, and each one of them is holding moisture, which makes it a particularly good plant for areas that experience a great deal of drought. These lovely little flowers, very dainty. As I said, everything is about detail, and that's the appreciation here. It's these dainty flowers sitting just above this beautiful foliage. So I'm going to nestle that just by the side of the container there. So that's going to grow into that, and again cascade down the sides. And look at the different texture of the foliage as well, and the combination of the flowers. It's starting to become a very interesting container. Next up, a little Saxifraga mossy. Look at this plant. Spongy, moss-like foliage, and then on these spikes here, lovely flowers born right above, as if they're a cloud floating above it. When we was kids, we loved this plant because my dad had one on the back garden, and because again it's a carpet, it grew over the wall and down the wall, and we used to be able to lift it up, and it was like a mat of the foliage underneath. We used to hide secret notes and things like that behind it. It is a lovely little plant. So I'm going to position this at the back to use the height of the flowers when it comes into bloom. Now there is still space in this pot. Originally I had a mind to plant this sempervivum. The issue is, if you start to cram it in, it starts not to look like an Alpine pot, more just a pot packed with plants. You're trying to make a scene more than a planted container. So from where you're looking at this side, you can see the nice rim of the pot, and there's a little bit of gap in between either side, of which I will be adding some grit to give it a sort of like a rocky feeling. It gives a chance of the container and the grit to be part of the feature and give it some personality. You also want space for the plants to grow. these will be in this container for years and years. So give them a little bit of breathing space. And the other thing that's key with alpines is they don't like too much water. So by leaving some gaps with the gravel, you can water the ground rather than leaving moisture on the foliage. And a little bit of grit at the back of the container just here as well finishes it off, looking great from that side, this side, and even this one as well. So it's a feature container rather than just a pot full of plants.
There are few plants as stunning as a flowering wisteria in spring. But whether they're growing up a house or over a pergola, the secret to keeping them looking good and flowering well is all in the pruning. Here's what you should be doing in summer.
Summer is a great time to prune your wisteria. They are beasts, they don't half grow. It's finished flowering and it's having its growth spurt. And now's the time to get right in amongst it and prune some of these whippy strands out. Otherwise they end up in your gutters, round your windows, in the door frames and the like. And if you don't prune them, you lose control.
But where to start with a mess like this? Actually, it's quite simple.
The secret is you can see where the old wood is just here. If I follow this branch along, about the 5th bud, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and take this whole strand off here. The one thing to remember whilst you're cutting is to cut it at an angle away from the leaf. So you're angling it so it's not going into the joint of the leaf, just away, and give that a snip. There we are. I don't want to do the detail pruning now because I can't really see the framework of what the branches are. I'm keeping it really under control. And I'm only cutting things that I don't need to train. Now this branch here I'm going to use to train just underneath the window here. So if you've got some that you're looking to push in a certain direction, don't cut those, train those. Now it really helps giving your wisteria a prune now, because it encourages the plant to flower. But more importantly, if you weren't to prune it and leave it till next spring, a lot of these whippy branches will be hiding the flowers that you have got growing. And of course, if you're allowing a little bit more light into the plant, you're also helping the wood to ripen as well, because the sun's getting through and so's the air. Hey, here we are. Here's something interesting. Look down here. If you don't do it, look at this one. This one is in fact growing back into itself and starting to rewrap itself along the main trunk area. So what I'm going to do is disconnect this one here and take it out from around the trunk, untangle it, so to speak. There we are, that's got caught. Look, it's even sprouting from the base. You just need to chop those off. Just clean everything up, keep it as uncongested as you can. Now, this one here is a bit of a woody one, but it's not really needed in the framework, so I'm going to remove this. Listen, don't be shy. Even if you've got a wisteria that you haven't pruned for a while, summer is a great time just to get control, enough to make it easier for you during the winter. And then, when it's winter, this plant loses all its leaves, and you can clearly see the wooden framework underneath, and that's when you get in and do the more detailed pruning. But this way, you've got it under control, and it makes the job of winter pruning so much easier. There we are, all under control. Couple of minutes job, and it helps the wisteria not only look good, but flower too for next year. Now we're into the summer and the sun is shining. The occasional job of watering becomes a daily task. But what happens if you're busy? What happens if you go on holiday? I'm going to give you some hints and tips on how you can set up automatic watering systems that help you take care of your plants. The first one is very easy. It's one of these little spikes. These spikes here you attach onto bottles, and at the bottom there's tiny holes that release water over a period of time. Now let me just show you. I'm just using an old plastic bottle. Fill it up with water, and then you attach the adapter straight on. There we go. Turn it upside down. Well, you can see that's flowing just a little bit too quick. The secret of success with these is calibrating the flow, and you do that with a little bit of kitchen roll, inserting it in there to slow down the amount of water. Now I've done this one earlier, as you can see it's already fitted in there, and now you can see it's just a slow drip, because that's what you want, a regular constant supply of water, and you just insert it down next to your plant. If you're going away for longer than a day or two, or you don't want to keep refilling it, you can of course use bigger bottles. But of course you have got to keep topping these up as they run out. If you're looking for something a bit more elaborate, well, we've got that too. Now this is an automatic watering system, and just like any kit that you buy or get given, it always looks much more complicated than you think. It usually ends up being left in a box in the shed. I'm going to set one up here with you, and we can see together how easy it's going to be.
The box should contain everything you need except batteries. There are all sorts there, from pipes to drippers and fixings, but don't be overwhelmed. To get started, you need the controller, the larger pipe, and a flow controller.
Now the first thing I've done is, out of the box I've taken the timing controller, and with a little adapter that you get that fits on to your tap, and then you attach the timing controller to that. Now I've already inserted the batteries into the control panel, and I'm just taking off this normal hose adapter on the bottom, and instead putting this flow regulator instead. It helps keep a constant flow to the drippers, and that just screws in to take its place. Make sure it's well in position and tight. Now I've got to attach the feeding pipe to the bottom, and it's just a push on. Now in the kit, some of those bags are just full of hose tidies that you can attach it to the fence or peg it down and the like, but for the sake of this demonstration I'm going to get straight to the business end. Now there are a couple of options with this, and this is the easiest one. You just peg it down and run it as a line quite close to your plants, and then where your plant is close to the pipe, with this little widget you poke a hole in it and push in one of these little drippers, and then when the automatic system comes on, this drips water in and takes care of this plant. And as you snake it around your borders, you can be sure every plant has access to water automatically.
For hanging baskets and pots, the thin hose comes into play.
Now the secret with your pots and containers is to try and get the hose as close to them as possible. You don't actually need them to rest on the top of the containers, because we're going to get something to help the water make that journey, and that is a small bit of pipe, a little bit of feeder that drops the water into the pot, and a small connector that connects the little hose onto the big one, and of course the all-important widget. Now what I'm going to do is just make a hole in the main hose using the spike end of the little widget, and you can hear it click. There you go. Next, use the connector, and what you do is you insert it in to the bottom of the widget, so you've got this piece in like that, and then with a bit of pressure push it in, and then start twisting it to screw it in. The next thing is I get hold of the hose, And then, with a bit of wiggling and a bit of pressure, it makes a good connection to the main hose. Next, this has two ends. The smooth end is where the water comes out. The one that's slightly ribbed here, that helps hold the hose on, and with a little bit of pressure and wiggling, it connects it onto the small hose, and then I just stick it into position, ready to take the water to this individual plant. Now, if you've got a lot of pots and containers, you can make this stretch a bit further by looking out for one of these little things in the packaging. It's a little T-bar junction, effectively, enabling me to have one hose coming from the main feed, going off and splitting to do two pots, rather than one just in there. One comes out to do two. Let me just show you what I've done here. So with that little connector, I've connected two pipes on with two individual feeders, and this little short pipe here to connect into the main one. With these little spaghetti lines, you can create little diversions, one to do one container, one to do a window box, and a whole host of others. And because you're splitting them as they go, it just makes it flexible. You can make it bespoke for what you have. And I've even got a nice long one here for my hanging basket.
No matter what system you use, there is one more important job.
Now, if you don't put anything on the end, the water just comes straight out, and that's where this bit of kit comes in. Thread it through like that, bend over the end, tuck it in, and that seals it. Perfect. Everything automatically watered. Then you've got to program it. You can set it for how long it waters and how often it waters, all dependent on the weather, of course. The one thing to do though, remember to turn your tap on first. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any ideas of topics you'd like me to cover in a future episode, please put them in the comments below. And why not subscribe to my channel for more great free gardening content. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your garden.